So, welcome everyone. My partner in crime is Gav Duncan this
Hi,
night.
guys.
And our guests are Tim Kelly. He's an election and communications strategist, founder and owner of Kelly Strategy. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Carlos Cruz, account manager at Jamestown Associates. Welcome.
Thank you.
Both guys are pretty much into politics. You worked with a lot of Republican politicians, so we would need your expertise tonight. Well, tonight in Hungarian.
Exactly, yes. It's coming up for 20 to 1 here.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So it's way past our bedtimes.
Way past.
That is way too late.
So who is gaining momentum and what are your views? What are your expectations for this election?
Sure. Should I start?
Yeah.
Sure. The race has been very fluid. It's been seeming. I'd say in the last few days, the president has really been carrying more momentum coming into today. A good example that I saw just, I think it was on Sunday, the Iowa poll, which is really a gold standard for statewide polling in the US. On Sunday, it showed the president at 48%, Joe Biden at 41%. Nothing remarkable there. The president, maintained, I think, a 9-point lead over Hillary Clinton back in 2016 in Iowa. What was compelling was that the Des Moines Register described Biden as having, quote, faded. Now, faded is a disastrous term to describe a candidate in the closing days of a race. For quite a while now, Democratic elected officials, campaign operatives, financial backers, from the very beginning, they thought of Biden, saw Biden as a weak candidate. Worried that he wasn't a closer, quote unquote. Even if he was going to be ahead going into the last week of the race, they thought victory could still slip from his grasp. This really, I'm not saying is doom for Biden, but, worst possible news at the worst possible time for the Biden campaign. In addition to that, I think it's important to note that in the past few days and weeks, among the RCP averages, the Real Clear Politics averages here in the States, that's a large average of many, many polls that are taken over many months tracking the presidential races. 3 weeks ago in Florida, Biden was up, according to the RCP average, about 4.5%. Now he's only up by 1%. In Pennsylvania, he was up about 7%. Now he's up by 3%. That's Biden I'm talking about. 2 weeks ago in North Carolina, Biden up by about 3%. Now Trump is ahead by 1% in the average. 10 days ago in Arizona, Biden up by about 4%. Now only up by 1%. So, the president is seeing some real momentum. What's that?
What's the reason for that? What's your point?
I think that it could potentially just be chalked up to the fact that, the president has been out there, campaigning on some real accomplishments, from crushing ISIS to cracking down on China to resisting, using the federal government to control people's lives through the pandemic. Joe Biden is out there every day saying, I'm not him. And so when you have Trump saying day after day, I'm doing this, this, and this, all of these great things, and Biden saying, that's not me, I'm not this guy. I think I'm not saying it's changing everyone's mind. Very contrast.
It's a good tale of two campaigns.
Right.
The president has run relentlessly on what he's done for the American people and how he's made your life better. Joe Biden is a candidate whose best attributes seem to be his personal qualities. He's a nice guy. You like him. He's experienced great loss in his life, and he wears it on his sleeve.
That's hardly a reason to vote for a presidential candidate.
But, and that's exactly right. I think there's an exit poll today that showed that voters are overwhelmingly concerned with who's going to deliver for them, not who they like better or who they think is a nicer guy.
So you need the tough guy, not a nice guy, isn't it?
And the president's run a campaign based on that, and he's run a lot of advertising that says, "You may not like the way I do things, but I get things done for you."
But I mean, what would you say, Carlos, sorry to interrupt you? There's been a lot of, in the liberal media over here in Europe, people have been pushing the idea that Trump has left it too late. That yes, fine, he's coming back, there's a bit of a wave, he's coming back, he's surfing this wave of popularity, but they're suggesting that for some reason they think, and I accept that this is liberal media, so we've got to take everything they say with a fair amount of salt, but they say that they think he's left it too late. Is this possible, or do you think he's timed it right?
No, I think he timed it right. He's finishing his campaign, doing 5, 6, 7 events in different states, in different time zones.
Which is a lot.
While Joe Biden's hidden in his basement. The Democrats made a concerted play with more states voting by mail and voting early to run up the score as much as they possibly could for Election Day. But they've left millions of votes on the table. And a lot of those voters are looking to the president and liking his leadership and thinking that they want 4 more years.
Right.
Absolutely. Speaking of hiding, this was, we know the president is the king of the nickname. And I think that the fact that, he came up with Joe Biden, and it didn't take off in the way I really was hoping that it would. I mean, I think all of us, we would say Hyde and Biden, but of course the brilliance of the president, he immediately finds Joe Biden.
I mean, obviously, so Tim, you obviously agree with what Carlos said, that you don't think he's left it too late. You don't think that there's been a tactical error. This is planned. This is going to plan. As it was planned, this should be all hands on deck, everything working well.
Absolutely. I mean, I also think, we have to remember that this guy is also, taking quite a bit of offense every day. He's running the country. He still is, fighting this pandemic. He's overseeing the government and, I think doing a remarkable job of getting, around the country every day, getting, thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, out in front of him where he can deliver that message. It's ambitious. And as far as him not getting out in time, how long do you guys typically campaign in Hungary?
Well, I mean, that's a rubber band.
Yeah. Do you mean like officially or
unofficially?
Because officially,
the official campaign's about a month, right?
Yeah. Unofficially, it never stops. It goes from one cycle to the next. You start with a fight and you end with a fight. So
exactly. I think you could argue that this president's campaign never exactly ends either.
I mean, for the past 4 years, he's been taking a kicking all over the US, but I mean also all over globally. I mean, this is one thing that we have to consider, the fact that, okay, the US is possibly the most powerful country in the world, and therefore people are interested because of that. But the amount of personal hatred that people have for US presidents is quite phenomenal. I mean, it's like, this man must also be Father Christmas, because he's able to get around to everybody's house and piss in their shoes, slap them around the face when they're not watching. I mean, it's all personal. And you're just stunned. So, have you met the guy? No. Well, what did he do that pissed you off to this extent?
Especially among Western Europeans.
It is unbelievable. I've got people who I went to school with, who I've known for 40 years, who now will not speak to me because I pointed out to them, it's like, you can't vote for him. So why are you getting why are you getting so upset about this? You're not a US citizen. Let the US citizens decide what they want to do. Surely this is half of the course.
Absolutely. And that extends to his, his diplomatic corps and Europe as well. Figures like, Rick Grenell, who has been very strong in Germany and in the Balkans for the president, has been received with closed arms throughout Western Europe.
I mean, we've got the same thing. I mean, the U.S. ambassador to Hungary, who's about to retire, I think, David Kornstein. Now, the guy who was when John Kelly was the Secretary of State, we got a guy who wasn't even ambassador. He was chargé d'affaires. And that guy did nothing. He wouldn't meet the Hungarian government, the elected government. He went out and spent all his time speaking to the opposition, going on pride marches with the opposition, doing everything that he could to get up the noses of the democratically elected Hungarian politicians. So you should say, well, you know, maybe it wasn't meant to be a message, but it certainly came across as a message, and not a nice one.
Right. Yep.
But
it changed with Trump.
Changed with Trump. I mean, okay, I mean, we also have to say, I mean, to qualify that, we have to say that there is a difference between, or at least as far as Hungarians are concerned, there is a difference between the Republicans pre-Trump and the Republicans post-Trump. The fact that Trump broke with the idea of, hey, let's export democracy just like the Democrats always want to do, and let's deal with all the shit that comes with that. The fact that he said, no, we've got other problems to deal with. We'll look after ourselves. Everybody else can look after themselves. We certainly can see a big difference in the way that we were treated by American politicians, by the American establishment. It was a huge breath of fresh air. Unbelievable difference.
Wow. Yeah.
You touched on this issue, but I would like to ask you about the media thing, because it's not just the mainstream media, but it's the big tech companies, which are probably seemingly waging a war on President Trump. So how do you see that issue? Because it's a big force. So can he handle that? Can he win against the big tech companies?
Absolutely. Carlos, I don't know, if you have an opinion on this, you're more than welcome to chime in, but it seems as if, there has been, a concerted effort by the administration to push back against the tech companies that have been, perceived as censoring content and not necessarily providing the conservative perspective in a very open and thoughtful way. Ironically, it seems as if I'm not an expert on the subject matter, but the Democrats have been much more open to breaking up the tech companies based on their size, based on their competitive advantage, infringing upon certain American rights. So I certainly think that the president has very little issue pushing back against the tech companies. At the same time, it's a very significant piece of the way he communicates with the American people. So I do think there's a balance there for him. But I don't, when I think of President Trump, I don't think of him as having a hard time pushing back on anybody. But I'm sure there are times when I'm wrong about that.
Right. He's really good at finding a way through.
Right.
It doesn't matter that 95% of political contributions that come from the tech industry go to Democrats. 95%. It doesn't matter that they slap labels on his tweets or they regulate his Facebook traffic.
Right.
If they put up a roadblock, he gets around it.
Yeah.
And he's really artful in using both the levers of public policy, throwing around Section 230, looking to break up TikTok and prevent its sale to a Chinese owner, and using the levers of public opinion and taking his show on the road whenever possible, rallying tens of thousands of Americans and being able to deliver a message directly to them. I think big tech and big media's advocacy has hurt them. I think they're less credible than they have been in the past. And I think that loss of trust enables the president to go around the system and to deliver his message.
But I mean, Carlos, is there any real reason other than traditional reasons why big tech has sided, as you said 95% of donations go to the Democrats? I mean, is there any logical reason for that being the case now? Or is this just a case of, oh, this is always the way it's been done, we will merely continue this tradition?
I think tech has always been a little bit more liberal and conservative.
Right.
They've chosen to set up their home in the liberal parts of the country. Right. They tend to be university educated. They tend to be well off. They fit in a lot of categories that tend to make you
but
more
I mean,
liberal.
The fact that they tend to be university graduates. I mean, I was just watching, I forget, it was NBC, CNN, something like that. And it came up, flashed up a statistic saying that just highlighted the amount of debt that American college graduates and university graduates have. And you sort of say, well, hang on, when is the logic going to come in? When is the penny going to drop? But here I am, I've got a huge debt. The IMF are coming after me. And at some point, I'm going to have to change my opinions. I'm going to have to switch from being this lovely liberal guy who sits on a beanbag and plats people's hair for lunch. I'm going to have to sort of like knuckle down and start making some money. Surely at that point, we're going to see, I don't know, a change, not in the demographic, but in the opinion of the demographic.
The adage is that as you get older, you tend to get more conservative.
Yeah.
I think that's becoming less true now. But it goes back to the president and I think his personality. Right. He doesn't want to play the parlor game of holding your hand and making you think everything's okay. If there's a problem, he's going to tell you there's a problem. And then he's going to try to fix it. Then he's going to tell you how to fix it. And if it requires a tough decision, he's there to make it. Where some people, media, tech, tend to want a different reality where they don't have to face the hard problems or make the hard decisions. It takes a tough guy to get things done. And the president is probably the toughest in terms of tenacity, toughest elected official that the country's seen in a long, long time.
I think Carlos and his team said it beautifully when they said the president is no Mr. Nice Guy. I think that was the phrase.
I mean, sorry, Tim, touching on what Carlos just said, the fact that, the Americans haven't seen a president this tough for a long, long time. I mean, who would you automatically say would have been the last tough president that you saw?
But I mean, maybe Teddy Roosevelt, but I have no memory.
That's okay.
This is a guy who disappeared into the woods for 6 months at a time and not let anybody know he was there. So again, this was 100 years before me. So I don't have a really true parallel. President Trump in terms of toughness. John McCain, I think, has always thought of somebody who has a very a tough background, somebody who was military, who saw saw some horrible things. His governing style, also a tough guy. Ultimately, the polar opposite in terms of tactics and approach as President Trump. And I think we saw that very clearly in their relationships. But I think it's very difficult. And now, Carlos may have another opinion about this. It's very difficult for me to come up with someone who really has that firm approach, that take no prisoners type approach that, we all love President Trump for taking.
Carlos,
it's probably Lyndon Baines Johnson.
I mean, we're going back to ancient history here. I mean,
but that was a guy known for literally getting in your face, poking you in the chest, and parading you until he got his way.
Like Aaron Burr, maybe.
Yeah, maybe Aaron Burr. I think he was probably a little bit more of a tactician, where the president's probably more of a bull in the china shop. And at the end of the day, his bet is that you won't mind if a couple of plates of china get broken if the country's better, if the economy's open, if it's easier to retire and easier to get ahead in the world.
Okay. Thank you very much for your correspondence, and I suggest we continue this later.
We're going to go for a sleep now. We're going to just get our head down.
Then we continue.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for the interviews. All right. We'll speak to you later, okay?
Thank you. Bye.